We have feared this for a while, but now with YouTube admitting that they are sending less notifications, it is more important than ever that you press the notification bell in addition to subscribing. Now, over to the video. Despite the announcement of Super Smash Bros. Switch coming this year, all of us are still looking forward to hearing more about Game Freak's upcoming Pokemon RPG at what we hope will be revealed at E3 this June. But then again, this whole situation is radically different than for any other Pokemon game. First and foremost, what we officially know about the development of the game at such an early stage, and that it has in no way been confirmed that this is a Generation 8 title, outside of some rumors that have been debunked since. So what if Pokemon Switch is a reboot like Breath of the Wild, but instead of a return to Kanto, we are in for a revisit to Johto? Let's find out inside Pokemon Switch. Johto, a province that has been overlooked by Game Freak and the Pokemon Company for close to a decade, while still by many records being the host to the best game in the series, with a more desperate Team Rocket, more menacing trainers and gym leaders, and a rival with a dark past. Gold and Silver was a major step up for the Pokemon franchise. Yes, it was to some extent more of the same, but bigger and much more ambitious. As it would turn out, it was the perfect recipe for an instant classic that would overshadow the original at launch, but not necessarily be the focal point of the series. You see, both in the anime and in a number of games, Kanto has been the same as home, while Johto was just one of many destinations in the series. Even so, Johto is the historical cradle of Japan, and this was reflected heavily in the lore, landmarks, the city of Ecruteak based on real-life Kyoto, the towns and villages of the game, the legendary beasts, and the two lower legendaries Ho-Oh and Lugia. Johto as a province offers a slower and much more enriched experience than the straightforward good versus evil theme of Kanto, and highlighted gray areas, thus putting the world of Pokemon into a much deeper perspective. And isn't this a premise that would fit Pokemon Switch perfectly? A still not overused, but rich in lore, history, and cultural province where we across 2 games and a remake of these were only able to scratch the surface. If Pokemon Switch is a reboot, there is no doubt that instead of the traditional Kanto, you should rather look to Johto, as this is a province that deserves to be depicted in 3D in more than a 6-minute generation summary. But oh boy did those shorts trigger our will for a reboot based in Johto. Just think about it. Pokemon is taking a great leap with their first HD mainline title. A title that could either continue on the established track of visiting new regions, check out our video on the topic after this one, or just like Breath of the Wild, reimagined and expand on one of the existing ones. As much as we love new provinces, each major shakeup or soft reboot deserves in its first entry to play it safe when it comes to the setting it unfolds. It needs a sense of familiarity to convince the skeptic to try new ways and adapt to the changes and struggles ahead. We remember very well this feeling in Breath of the Wild, where we shortly upon leaving the Shrine of Resurrection told ourselves, this is a brand new Zelda experience filled with innovations from its storytelling, or lack thereof, to gameplay. The only thing that was left familiar to evoke a sense of nostalgia was the land of Hyrule. We believe that this is the exact treatment that Pokemon needs, and for once, put an emphasis on quality over quantity. This doesn't mean that the quality of recent Pokemon games has been bad, it is more than that they have become too stale and predictable. We feel that where Sun and Moon, and in particular Ultra Sun and Moon, filled a similar role to A Link Between Worlds, Pokemon Switch could follow a similar principle to Breath of the Wild. And this brings us over back to Johto, but not the Johto you know as well as your own pocket, but an undefined and alien one. No, we don't mean that it has to be post-apocalyptic, but rather offer a new adventure in a setting loosely based on those from Gold and Silver. This shouldn't pose much of a problem, seeing as the game will definitely be in 3D and HD and offer a whole new way of exploring the world you are in. This will, in particular, go for the cities, which will have to be more than just a few buildings and a Poké Center. No, that will just be embarrassing and, to be honest, cringy. What we want to see is the ambition seen in the anime, with actual cities, the beautiful and striking landscape of Kyoto. In other words, everything that will be so much more impressive in 3D and HD. It doesn't matter if this will be a seamless or bound world, just seeing the Johto province in 3D and HD will be a spectacle to behold. I think we have said 3D and HD enough. At least this isn't 4K.
4K, 4K, and 4K, 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 4K update, 4K.
Free 4K?
So what is the probability of this happening? To be honest, somewhere around 30%. With that being said, what speaks for a Johto soft reboot is that it will not require as much planning as two full-blown Generation 8 titles. Because the premise, just like what was the case in our Kanto episode, is already set. You have the landscape, locations, and even villain now that Team Rocket is back from the grave. The only thing needed is to extend some areas, mix and rearrange some of the gyms, but if they are to return, don't go full retard like what Breath of the Wild did to its dungeons. Seriously, don't do what Breath of the Wild did to dungeons. Though the Kahunos mostly did that already. Ouch. Anyways, introduce new characters, but naturally have some Easter eggs and callbacks to Gold and Silver for us who remember those gems. Since most of the research for the province is already in place when we play with a soft reboot, this would allow Game Freak to work on delivering an interesting story with a good premise and make the exploration a little more open than in, say, Ultra Sun and Moon. Like, come on, it's 2018, maybe 2019 when this game comes out. Just use your time to make the game the best it can ever be.
I wanna be the very best, like no one ever was.
Speaking of making your game exceptional, we want to dedicate this last portion of the video to the man who made it possible for the second generation to stand out in the 22-year-old franchise. But no one could possibly tell it better than Game Freak did in Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon. When we were having trouble fitting all the data in Gold and Silver, we were really in a pinch. This amazing guy came along and made a program for us that solved all our problems. He went on to become the amazing president of a real big company soon after that too. We and Game Freak are obviously talking about none other than the genius video game programmer, then president of HAL Laboratory and later president of Nintendo, Satoru Iwata-san. To be honest, Pokemon Switch could be the fitting conclusion and final tribute to President Satoru Iwata's memory and long-lasting legacy that he deserves. And the way it might be done is to replicate the great feat.
But how could this possibly be done in 2018 or 2019? Simple, by not only including one province, but two. And this applies to whether Pokemon Switch will be the beginning for Generation 8 or a Johto Reboot. But if this game will take place in Johto, make sure that you also include Kanto to bring you back where it all began 22 years ago. There's no doubt that Johto is unbreakingly tied to Kanto, as we have never had a mainline game with Johto alone. And we all know that the second generation wouldn't have been as special without facing the new Elite Four of Kanto, or revisiting the Kanto gyms and finally going up against Champion Red on Mount Silva. If we are to face again at the top of that mountain, high up in the clouds in Pokemon Switch, make sure that we all get to stand face to face and go up against the genius that made this possible, Mr. Satoru Iwata.
And on that note, we want to give a shout out to Luigigigas for his beautiful Generation 1 and 2 Pokemon orchestration. Thank you for watching, and thank all our gracious patrons, including Patreon royal producer Kenyatta Ali, for supporting our productions. We are closing in on our next great milestone, 150,000 subscribers, after we, yesterday, surpassed 134,000 subscribers.
When we reach that number, we will launch a special line of t-shirts to commemorate this feat, and if it happens by mid-May, I will invite one of you over to our Norwegian headquarters in Oslo this July. There's only that we can only pay for tickets from the US, Canada and Europe, because of visas and so on, so it is a little bit limited as such.
With that being said, we believe that together we can reach this next milestone in good time prior to E3. So So if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, press that very important notification bell, and like this video to stay updated when the next episode of Inside Pokemon Switch drops. Finally, we want to remind you of our big PAX East meetup on Saturday, April 7th at 10 a.m. at the Screenwave booth at the Boston Convention Center. So be there or be square.
But until the next video, make sure to catch them all, and we will see you soon.